Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been a minute, it's been 2 months. I'm sorry about that, but at least we're back here. So, why is AK here today? So, I'm going to be talking about the Canadian Express entry. I know we've been all about digital nomad and we'll get back to that. But everything about this page is all about relocation. If you want to leave your country, move to another country, I give you options, right? That's why I'm here, okay? All right. So today we're talking about the Canadian Express entry. I know sometimes if you open Instagram, you're seeing Express entry drawers. You open TikTok, you're seeing people talking about Express entry, and you're wondering, what is Express entry? Kilo Shele Ganga, what is it? What is it about? What is it? Someone help me explain. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm making this video. Okay, now I'm going to try to break it down as much as possible, and we're going to talk about the entirety of the express entry process from start to finish. Talk about a couple of programs, some of them that we need to go in depth into. We're going to probably talk about that in another video because this one will be exceptionally long if we wanted to break it down, and even a couple more other things that we'll talk about. Some of them to kind of like go into the nitty gritty of it. We'll probably have to do that in another video. Okay, Canadian Express Entry is an online point-based immigration system that Canada uses to choose who is eligible for their permanent residence. Okay, now if you're wondering why express entry, why did it start? So one of the reasons why Canada started to do express entry, first and foremost, it started off in 2015, and the reason why they started it was because they started to see, they just basically wanted to align their economic needs to immigration, and the process that they had before wasn't exactly scalable. It was more sort of a first come first serve basis, and the process took a lot more longer time. But now they assign you points, and if you're part of the people that they need, they just come in, they scoop you, and you're good to go. Okay, so under this express entry program, they have three main economic programs. The first one is called Federal Skilled Workers Program, which is FSW. FSW is usually for people who have work experience, skilled workers who have work experience in Canada or outside of Canada. So regardless of wherever you are, if you're a skilled worker, you qualify under this program. The next one that they have is Canadian Experience Class. That's people who have studied in Canada, who have worked in Canada before. Those are people that fall into that category. We have another category which is called Federal Skilled Trades, FST. These are people who are skilled in different types of trades. Now, these trades can vary. We can have carpenters there, we can have tailors there, we can have basically different kind of trades. So long as you're skilled trade and you have a certain kind of qualification for it, you can definitely fall under this group. Okay, so we will definitely break down these different groups in an entirely video because it's very long, and for us to be very detailed, we need to take a lot of time. But these are the three main programs that they have, and regardless of who you are, regardless of what you are, for you to become a permanent resident in Canada, you need to fall into either of these three categories. Okay, aside from like the refugee side of things. Okay, so all these programs usually add you into what they call an express entry pool. These are basically eligible candidates from different parts of the world. Don't think it's just Nigeria or it's just Africa. No, I've met Australians here who came in through the permanent resident route. I've met people from China. So it's different parts of the world. Everybody, so long as you're not Canadian, you can actually apply and qualify to be inside this pool. So your credentials determine where you fall in, and also your credentials determine what your points will be. So if you're wondering what the points is based off of, the points is based off of different factors like your age, work experience, skill, and language proficiencies. So if you know French, you know English, that's like an amazing combo for you. If you have a master's degree, if you have a PhD, that's an amazing combo for you. If you have different certifications, which can be verified, like let's say you did ICANN, that's amazing for you. Okay? Now, next thing we're going to talk about is who is eligible. If you are in wherever part of the world you are and you're wondering, how can I actually apply for the Canadian, how do I know if I'm eligible to actually even start the process of trying to apply for a Canadian permanent residency. The first one is you need to have at least 1 year skilled work experience in whatever work that you decide to do, but it has to also fall in under the tier system 0, 1, 2, or 3. This could be managerial jobs, they could be tech jobs, technical jobs, or even odd jobs. Some odd jobs can actually be included. Let's say cleaner jobs, it could be included, and also even security jobs. There's certain odd jobs that you feel like, hey, I'm not actually eligible. Carpenters, you would do some parts of the world we categorize a carpenter as an odd job, but it's not. It's actually quite a job that is in demand in Canada. The next one is your language ability. Say you're able to speak French fluently, that would definitely increase, make you eligible, or you can speak English fluently, that would also make you eligible, or just be able to communicate in either of these languages. If you're bilingual, perfect. If you're bilingual in French and English, that's perfect, but if it's just English, that's still okay. Just make sure you're able to communicate in English, because you need to prove that by the test that you will do, to say that, hey, I'm eligible to speak English. The next one that you have is education. If you have a high school diploma, or in Africa or certain parts of the world, you have like your first WAEC or NECO, that would make you eligible. And if you have like a BSc, that gives you a lot more points. If you have an MSc or a master's degree, that gives you a lot more points. If you have a PhD, that gives you even a lot more points. The next one is a clean background and health, because that will be required in the process. And then in certain situations, you might be required to submit your proof of funds. So depending on whatever category you're eligible for, let's say you're coming in from like the Canada Experience class, proof of fund is not necessarily required, especially if you have a job already in Canada. But if you're coming in with like FST or FSW, proof of fund is definitely required. And we're looking at like a family of one, just as you'll be looking at an average of 15,263 Canadian dollars, which is roughly around 72 million naira, which is around 13,000 USD if you want to convert it to United States dollars. So that's the amount that you're looking to prove to them, to say, hey, I'm eligible. This is the amount of money I have. Welcome me into your country. Remember, these are just the basics to say that, hey, I'm eligible to apply for these rules. There are other things that are actually giving you points, and we're going to talk about what this point-based system is. So the Canadian express entry pool is point-based, and you would get an average of 1,200 points in total. And there's so many factors that affect what these points are, or what the points you get are. And number one is age. Age is a huge factor. If you're between 18 to 35, there's a higher probability of you getting more points as opposed to someone who is like 30, 40 and above. Once you're 40, the points drop significantly. Once you're 30, 31, the points start to drop by 1 point to your 40, and then it drops by a lot. The reason why is they're looking for agile people who still have a lot longer working life potential. The next one that would make you a lot more eligible is if you're bilingual. If you can speak English and speak French, and you write the test, which usually includes reading, writing, speaking, and listening tests in these different languages. If you pass it and get like a band CLB 7 or higher, it will usually boost your points by a lot. If you're like CLB 4, depending on the category that you fall into, if you're like CLB 4 and you're trying to apply for the FSW, to drastically reduce your point, but if you're like in CLB 4 and you're going for like the Canada Experience class, the chances of you getting a boosted score is still okay. But if you're under the Federal Skilled Workers section, the chances are a lot lower. So you need to take a lot more English tests or French tests to boost that score. But if you're CLB 9 and above, your score would definitely go a lot more higher. And the next one is if you have a lot of years of experience, regardless of the field that you're in. Let's say you've been a data analyst for like the last 5 years, you're going to get a lot more points as opposed to someone who has been a data analyst for the last 2 years. So the longer you work, the higher points you would have. The next one is a job offer. If you have a job offer from a Canadian employer, that would also boost your points, or proof like LMIA from a Canadian employer, that will also boost your points. If you have a sibling here in Canada, that also gives you like an additional 15 points. If you have, if you've studied in Canada, that gives you additional points. And also, if a province nominates you to say, hey, we want you in our province, that gives you 600 additional points to whatever point cells that come. That's like a high boost for you. But then again, for you to be able to be nominated by provinces, there are like different ways to do it. And we can get a lot more into that in another video, because different provinces have different ways of deciding who they can call. Some of them, so long as you're like in the express entry pool, you're good to go. Like provinces like Alberta, right? If you're, let's say you're like in the health sector and they're trying to do draws, they're looking for people who are in the health sector, just come and take you from the pool. But certain provinces like Saskatchewan, Manitoba, even Ontario, Nova Scotia as well, you would have to go to another website to apply so that they can take you when they do their own draws, because these different provinces usually have their own like internal draws that they do to now make you get that 600 points. So you have to go to those websites, apply, and then come back and just wait, because you don't need to put it anywhere in your express entry pool, but you will need your express entry ID or reference number to add to those other websites to say, hey, I actually have an express entry profile, please add me to whatever nominations that you guys plan to do, and if I'm eligible, just pick me. And if you're eligible, you're just going to relay that to IRCC, and IRCC will add those 600 points for you. Okay, now we've been talking about pool, and the next I wanted to kind of like dive into a little bit is the draws. So every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, the Canadian government does something they call round of invitations or draws. Now, these draws are usually categorized according to different things. So it depends on their needs. It depends on their immigration needs and their economic needs. They want these two things to align. And one thing they do is that they might do a draw that is just focused on French speakers. They want French speakers who have 410 and above. And if they do that, every French speaker who is already in the pool, remember you have to already be in the pool, every French speaker who is already in the pool gets nominated. If they were trying to look for like 5,000 people, and by the time they check it, they see like there are like 5,001 people who are eligible to be chosen, what they will do is something they call a tiebreaker. And that tiebreaker is basically they'll not choose the last people who have been there for longer. Say you opened your express entry pool, your express entry account in like let's say you opened in like March, right? March of 2025, and someone else opened the express entry pool account in like express entry account in April of 2025. If they were going to choose who would be the last person to pick from that 410 bucket, they'll pick the one that had the account they opened in March, because that was the earlier account, as opposed to you that your own was opened in April. But there's nothing much you can do around that. And it's honestly a point basis. There's nothing much you can do. Just try to apply as fast as possible, or try to open the account as fast as possible. But regardless of that, even if you opened it earlier, because the express entry account or the express entry profile expires after 12 months. So that means you have to now go in fresh again, as if you're starting all over again, but you have all the requirements that you need. So you just need to upload them again and just do the same process that you had done before. But that would also still put you, maybe if your express entry pool expired in, let's say, December of 2025 of 2024, and you did another one in January or around the same time, that would now push you a little bit back. But that's fine. It doesn't necessarily matter, especially unless there's like a tiebreaker rule. That's when that becomes a factor. But if that's not the case, then it doesn't necessarily matter when you open that account, so long as you have all your credentials, you've tried to get the highest score possible, you definitely get nominated. So for you to even start, there are things certain things I feel like is important for you to do. Number one is for you to check your eligibility. And how do you do that? You can use something they call a comprehensive ranking system, which is basically how they assign those points to you, right? There's a website which I'm going to link in the description of this video that kind of shows you, or it will push you to the website where you add your age, your work experience, what you plan to get, or what you've already gotten in your TET scores, which will not determine what your points will be. And if you have siblings, do notes to say, hey, I have one sibling in Canada, and that would determine, kind of like do like a calculation. It's almost like a self-screening test to determine what your points you would be. And also, please feel free to play around with it. If you look at the scores and you maybe you did your IELTS and you see that what you scored was like a band 7, right? And you put out all that information, try to play around to say, hey, what if my band was like 8.5 across all the different language tests that I'm going to do? Let's say English, reading, speaking, writing, and listening. What if I got like an 8 on all of them? What would that be? So that you know what your target would be for the next English test or the next French test that you plan to do. I think for me, I feel like it was important for me to play around with it, especially when around the time I applied, because I did have to write the English test twice, not because the first one was really great, but my reading score was around like a band 7, which wasn't great, and I wanted to get it to like 8.5 or even 9, because that would also astronomically increase what my score was, because it did. And by the time I wrote it again, I got an 8.5, which was solid for me. So that's something that you can play around with, so that you can set targets and set goals for you for the next test that you want to do. So once you've done that, you've seen what you feel like you can meet or what you are eligible for, you can go ahead to take the next step. The next step is starting to gather your documents. Now, if you've checked your eligibility, the next one is gathering your documents. Some of the documents that you need at first. Remember, these are some of the documents you need at the beginning, not the entirety of the documents. The first thing you're going to need is that proof that you wrote that English test, or that proof that you wrote that French test, because there's a code that is in the paper that they will give you that you're going to have to add into the IRCC portal. The second thing that you would need is your credential ID that you had already verified with an ECA, which is like WES. You can verify your credentials with WES. You get that ECA, you need that information. The next one you need is a detailed breakdown of your work experience, because you're going to have to break it down. But before you even get to that point, I feel like it's important for you to actually do a lot more research into what tier you want to fall under, because sometimes your job role might not exactly be listed in that tier. So it might be like a combination of job roles, or you might have to take one job role, for example, that contains like 80 to 70% of your role, as opposed to the other one that has like 30%. So you need to do a lot more research into that tier system to understand what your knock code would be. So knock code is a way that Canada basically classifies skilled workers and skilled trades according to, say, because they have different knock codes, and those knock codes are also broken down into different tiers, which are 0, 1, 2, and 3. So you need to do your research into that to understand where you fall in, because that would also determine what you fill in once you create an account. Okay? Now, other things that you would have to do is to make sure that your passport is up to date. Then the next step you now have to do is to open your Express Entry account. At this point, remember that there are fees that will be incurred, and the first fee would be for your language test that you have done. The second fee would be for your verification of your credentials. Those are two things that you would have to pay for at this point. Okay, the next thing now is to open your account. Once you've gathered all these documents, go ahead to the IRCC website, click on apply to come to Canada, and click on Express Entry. Once you click on that, it will redirect you to where you open an account. It's called a GCE key. Once you open that account, then you start to add your details. They'll ask you a lot of information: first name, last name, date of birth, the whole 9 years. And if you're married, they will definitely ask you for your spouse information. So another thing to note here is, to be honest, the younger you are, the better. But if you're not that young, then you need to have a lot more. You need to have like more credentials. You need to have more higher scores with your English test, higher scores with your French test, and also make sure you have a lot more work experience, so that would help to boost your scores where your age sort of like drags it down a little bit. And if you're coming with a spouse, great. But if you're not, that's still fine. But if you and your spouse are young, and combined efforts actually boost your scores. But in a situation whereby, let's say, for example, you're married and you're a woman, you're 28 and your husband is like 35, I would highly advise you to be the principal applicant for that application as opposed to your husband. And some Nigerian men might, to be honest, if you want to come, let your wife be the principal applicant. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's just because she is a lot more younger, so she will have a lot more points to her. And again, your husband can create an account. You can also create an account on your end and just add each other in this different accounts, because once you're creating the account, you will be asked the option that if you're coming with your spouse or common law partner. And if you plan to come here with your wife, which I think you should, or if you plan to come here with a husband, which I think you should, please make sure you're adding them to your account. Because if you don't add them to your account and then you create your profile, once you get the ITA, please know that the ITA is just for you. It's not for your husband. It's not for your kids. So if you don't add them, you're telling Canada, hey, I want to migrate alone. I'm not coming with my family, which is not ideal because you would need your family here. Canada can be lonely sometimes, especially when you've not created your own community yet. Okay, so once you've created that account, you fill in those details, you get to the point where you are asked for the information on your IELTS result or your CELPIP result or your TCF if it's French, or TEF if it's the other type of French test that you do. There you add that information, and next they're going to ask you for your West credentials ID, because there's like a reference number that they will give you. You're going to add that there, and then add which course that you had verified for, and also add how many years equivalent that the ECA said that this your certificate is like the balance of in Canada. And after you've done that, the next thing that you need to do is to now start to add all of your work experiences. Now, when it comes to these work experiences, I feel like people kind of like have like a bit of confusion, in my own opinion. Let's say you had like a part-time job that you did. I feel like everyone should follow like a single or two knock codes. What do I mean? Let's say you had like a part-time job that you did for like 6 months, and the knock code for that job, for example, this is an example, let's say it was like a customer support role and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And you had another one where you were like a business development associate, and the role and the knock code for that one is like 014 or something like that. And then you did the data business associate role for like 3 years, while this one was 6 months. I would highly advise you to choose the one that you did for 3 years, because the longer the better. And if you have like 6 months work experience, almost negligible. So let your the higher the role that you have a lot more experience in be your primary knock code, because they will ask you which one is your primary knock code, especially if you've worked in like different fields. Let's say you started off your career as a support rep, and then before you know it, you started to work in data analysis, or you even moved to become a software engineer, or you started to be like a product manager, whatever the case may be. Let your longest job experience be your primary knock code. And feel free to also add the other ones there. It doesn't hurt for you to add it, but your primary knock code has to be the one that you have a lot more experience in, because that will be the thing to give you a lot more points. After you've added all those information into your express entry pool, you're going to now be given an express entry reference number or ID. And also you're going to get a job seeker validation code. This allows you to create an account with Job Bank where you can definitely apply for roles that you see within Job Bank and see if any of these employers can give you an LMI or even employ you while you're still waiting to be called by Canada to, apply for permanent residence. But that's optional. You don't necessarily need to do that. So once you submitted your profile, you're live. So if there's any other draw that comes after the time you submitted your profile, there's a likely chance that you're going to be called or sent an invitation to apply. Now, a couple of things to note at this point is that once you've gotten to this point, there's nothing you're paying the Canadian government. At this point, there's nothing you're paying them. But once you've gotten an invitation to apply, you fill all your credentials, your documents, everything, you're going to have to pay. If it's just you're going to have to pay around 2,100 Canadian dollars. You're going to have to pay it in Canadian dollars. Unfortunately, you're unable to pay it in Naira. At least as at the point where we did ours, we weren't able to pay it in anything other than Canadian dollars. So you're going to pay that for if it's just you, and if you have a spouse, that the money adds, and if you have like a child, it's 1,500 CAD. So it's quite a lot, but you're trying to come to Canada, right? So once your profile is submitted, your profile is active for 12 months, which is 1 year. After 12 months, you need to go back and resubmit everything you had done again and then enter the pool afresh. It's important to note that your IELTS result only lasts for 2 years, and your WEST credentials for people that use WEST would last for 5 years. So you need to make sure that you're topping up. If your IELTS expires after 2 years, just go ahead and write another one way ahead of time to make sure that you don't lose your position in the pool. And if your WEST credential expires, because to be honest with you, the wait can be long. I'm not even going to try to sugarcoat it. You can be lucky. You enter the pool and then the next day you're nominated. I mean, congratulations for you. But if not, the wait can be long, which is honestly, there's nothing more you can do about it. So just make sure you're preparing yourself to be patient. You're going to have to eat patience for breakfast, lunch, and dinner at this point. Just calm down, breathe in. That's just the process of it. Okay? You're waiting. Another things you can do is to try to improve your scores, try to get a master's degree if you're entitled with like a BSc, and if you're strong enough, try to get a PhD if you already have an MSc, and then just try to apply to these different provinces to see if you will get a provincial nomination. But just sit back and relax and just keep checking our website for the draws, and hopefully one day your time will definitely come. Okay? All right, so you've done all this. So after you've done all this and you get an ITA, you receive an ITA, congratulations. If you've gotten to that point and you're looking for a video to help you with next steps, you came to the right place. So if you've received an ITA, you have 60 days after because there's a countdown. You have 60 days after you receive that ITA to add all the credentials as proof of everything you've told them. Before, it used to be 90 days during COVID, but now they're really strict with the time. And also, once you get that ITA, you must accept or decline that ITA, like you would decline it because you worked so hard to get it. And now they give you that option. Are you going to accept it, or are you going to decline the invitation that they sent you? Once you accept it, you have a countdown of 60 days to submit all the documents that are required. Now, what are the documents that are required? Remember, everything that you had, your IELTS result is required. Your WEST proof is required because you're going to upload actual evidences. Now, remember the work experience that you had added back then. You need to now have reference letters from all of those employers that you had added that shows when you were employed with them, and it has to tell you what IRCC has. When you were employed with them, how much they paid you, the minimum hours that you work with them, and then the one that is very, very important, what your roles are. Now, in the knock code that you choose, remember there were like a specific roles that you said that, hey, this is what I did on a day-to-day, and that's why I'm aligned with this knock code. It has to match with what your employer is saying. Now, we're not saying you should copy what those knock codes job descriptions say verbatim and then paste it to give your employer to sign, right? It needs to align. So what am I saying? If you had said, oh, you were supervising a team of people, and in your day-to-day role you were managing a team of 5, it's the same thing. But just make sure that the roles align. What you said you did with the knock with on your day-to-day has to align with what that knock code is with in your profile when you created the account. Okay, you need to get reference letter from each of your employers as at the time when you were employed with them, and it has to tally with what you have. If for some unique reason your employer went out of business and there's no way to contact them, you need to show some sort of proof that employer actually went out of business. The next one is your police character certificate. You need to get that, and you need to also submit that. And also, if you were, for all my ajalas, people that lived in Portugal, Spain, Europe, wherever you lived, if you lived in a country for 6 months or more after you were 18 years of age, you need to get a police character certificate from that country. And if for some reason, let's say you because somewhere like Benin Republic, they don't usually give police character certificates to people who are not citizens. So if that's the case, you need to show proof from their government website that says, hey, we don't give police character certificate to non-citizens. But if that's not the case, you need to get police character certificate for every country that you stayed for 6 months or more consecutively. For 6 months or more consecutively after you turned 18 years of age. Okay? The next one that you need to do is your medical exam. So right now, Canada requires an upfront medical exam. So you need to do that. So it's usually wise to book ahead of time, because right now I hear that the spots get filled up pretty fast, especially in places like Lagos if you're applying for Nigeria. So if you're applying from Nigeria, so you need to make sure you book your medicals way ahead of time. And the next one is your proof of funds. We need your bank statements. We need your pay stubs. Basically, the proof of payment that they send you ahead of time before they pay you. That's like your pay stubs. And the bank statement has to reflect how much you claimed or your employer claimed they paid you on a month. Okay, make sure that you have even like a reference letter from your bank goes a long way. Okay, make sure you also add that. The next one is if you have a job offer from a Canadian employer, please go ahead and add that at this point. And if your sibling is here, you need to get some form of identification from them and also proof that they are your sibling. In certain unique situations, you're going to need if they're citizens here, you're going to need their ID and you're going to need their birth certificate, because your own birth certificate has to have the same mother and father, or if it's like by adoption basis, then adoption papers that prove that their parents adopted you, and the adoption papers show the mother and father there, so that they see that, okay, hey, this is a correlation that these people are actually related in some way, shape or form. Okay, the next one is if you're coming with your partner, you're definitely going to need your marriage certificate to prove it. And it's not just it has to be a court marriage certificate. Unfortunately, you're going to have to need that. So if you didn't get married, or you and your spouse did not get married, only got married traditionally, you might need to get a court marriage before you go through with this process, unfortunately. Yes. So after you've done that, you're going to have to pay the fees. Once you submitted, you're going to be requested to pay fees. Once you pay those fees, you're good to go. And then it's not like a waiting game. After you've done that, it's not like a waiting game for them to now access all the information you gave them to see is, hey, did this person actually see the truth with what they had submitted before? Does this tally? Yes, it's also important to note that you need to do your biometrics. Biometrics usually last for 10 years. So if you've done like a visit to Canada before, you don't necessarily need to do your biometrics anymore within that. But if not, you're going to be sent a letter to do your biometrics, which will last for 10 years. And you also need to, once you've done that, you're good to go. Just submit the proof that you had done your biometrics. So what they will do on their end is to do like a completeness check. IRCC will do their completeness check to see, hey, all the documents, all the information that requested from you are complete. The next one is acknowledgement of receipt. They're going to send you an AOR number that shows, hey, we've acknowledged this, that you can now use to track how far your application process has gone, which is pretty cool. They have like a website, you can track it, where it is now, what they've done so far, where at what point you are, and you can also see, kind of like where the end game is, which is pretty exciting. Um After that, you're going to get your letter that is telling you that you need to go and get your passport stamped. So you're going to submit your passport, and congratulations, you're coming to Canada. Okay. And that's a wrap. If there's anything else you guys want me to talk about, please let me know in the comment section. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And just tell me if there's anything else you wanted me to talk about. I know I did talk about the provincial, the economic programs that we have. I'm going to talk about that in a later video. I'm also going to go in depth into PMP in a later video. And even if you want me to, I can talk about like the test, the English test that you need to do, and the French test that you need to do. And honestly, it's not that difficult. I think a lot of people put too much pressure on themselves to take the test, forgetting that you speak English on a day-to-day. So you don't need to worry about it. Just have a conversation with your, the, what they call them, your interviewer. Have a conversation with them when you're reading. Read as normal and interpret what you read. Listen to what they're saying and interpret it in the paper that they will give you, if it's paper based, or in the computer if it's computer based. It's honestly straightforward, but if you guys want me to talk about it, I'm happy to also jump into that. So thank you so much. I will see you in my next video. AK out.